What is law? You and me are here to study, of course, the Income Tax Act. And yes, of course, I can simply start with the rules of the Income Tax Act. But I want you to appreciate and understand, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? And what part of which system you are. So the moment any person is born in this world, everybody is taught that okay, you have to study, go to school, then of course you have to get a job, and you have to earn money, build a house, give birth to children, and then one day die. Have you ever sat back and thought, why? What is this world that we are living in? Now I want you to sit back and think for a minute. Where are you? Now some of you are going to tell me, sir, I'm in my room. Some are going to say, oh, I'm in Delhi. Some are going to say, I'm in India. No, I mean, let's look at the broader picture. Where are we? We are on this gigantic ball, which is revolving around another gigantic ball, which as a unit is what we call the solar system, which is of course in what we call a galaxy, which is of course in what we call a universe, and there are multi-universes and so many theories going on. But does anybody know where we are? Why are we here? Who put us here? No. And that's where your studies start, your understanding. But it is not you that I'm talking about. When we say you, it is all of mankind. Let's step a minute back and go back in time. Now, all the mysteries of the universe, all the mysteries of the world. When man first saw a forest fire, he wondered where did it come from? And then he found out how to create fire. He then saw there are so many winds blowing, there are rivers, there are oceans, there is life underneath the ocean, life in the air, life on the earth. He started studying everything. He started studying animals, he started studying birds, various types of insects, he started categorizing all of them. And this did not happen in one generation. It happened over a period of time, and people kept noting down whatever they learned. They kept sharing it. One day, one person sitting beneath a tree saw the apple fall, and he gave us something called the principle of gravity. Another guy flying a kite saw lightning, and Benjamin Franklin tells us there is something called electricity. Then you have Alexander Graham Bell talking about something called the telephone. You have Arvind giving us the value of zero, so comes maths. So over generations, over years, over centuries, man is discovering the mysteries of this planet that God's given us and recording them in books so that this knowledge can be passed on to the next generation. Imagine you being born today and still having the mystery of how the fire is created. No, it's been passed down to you. So knowledge is being passed down over generations. Over generations, you had the telephone, the communication, going from a simple machine to the complicated one that you hold, and maybe you're watching this lecture on that machine today. But it's taken years. It's taken Bill Gates to write a software. It's taken Steve Jobs to create that application software so that everybody can use different types of programs, different types of applications, easily accessible to everybody. And closer home in India, it's taken Mukesh Ambani's Reliance Jio to bring the connection to your home with speeds at low cost so that everybody can use it. And it's not happened because of one human being. It's happened over a collective time of centuries to reach where we have reached today. Let's look at the other part of the story. When man started discovering these, obviously he had to feed his stomach. So he had to go and hunt. When maybe olden men hunted alone, they must have been killed by the tiger. They realized they can't do it alone. So they formed groups. In groups, maybe there was a problem taking decisions. So there is this one person who must have taken the lead, and he must have guided the others, and they must have collectively killed the lion, the tiger, the elephant, and conquered the entire world. Man did not do it alone. Man learned that for us to survive on this planet, we need to work in groups. And that gave rise to what we call your associations, your companies, your firms. But of course, in olden times, we did not call them that. So in olden times, leadership came about. Now, how did leadership come about? Earlier, of course, required the muscle power. So the leader became the guy who could fight, who could kill everybody else. And everybody else then, of course, started following whatever he said. So he started dictating his terms. He started telling everybody what to do. Slowly over time, when these leaders grew in power, they realized that people needed their protection from other leaders who also had their own groups. So the leaders started charging a bit of money from each of their people who wanted their protection, and thus gave rise to the concept of what we might call in today's term taxation. But it's been around for centuries. It is not something that started today. Now, obviously, when leaders grew in power, their children became leaders, and leaders were ruthless. So when you go back in time and look at even just the Tudor dynasty, you will find the king just gave an order, kill. And that's just about it. There was no logic for it. There was no questioning for it, because the king was king. People got sick of it. And then they said, no, we are not going to allow it. We are now wanting to take the power in our hands. And thus they said, we will elect who will rule us. And slowly, the concept of democracy came around in the world. But even today, you have dictatorship, you have democracy, you have kings and queens, and different theories, different philosophies, different ways of functioning still going on. There is no one way. So today what happens is, when constitutions are made, what is it? When a group of people sit together and for the rest of the public they represent, decide what rules will govern all of them, they have to write them down. And those are, of course, books. So let's take our independence, 1947. We have our governing book because we are a democracy. So that book that will govern how Indian public lives, what we do, can we breathe freely, can we talk freely? You know, all of that is given in fundamental rights, you must have heard in civics, in, of course, the book called the Constitution of India. Now, if I now start looking at how education as we know today developed, we will need to go and look at what happened in the 19th century. In the 19th century, beta, mankind realized that these random books written by all those intelligent human beings that walk the earth and are shared with people, but of course only the intelligent people are participating in it. People who think differently are understanding the laws. They decided that it's time that mankind is trained in a systematic manner, because the industrial revolution was coming in. There were human beings needed to run machines. So came your formal system of education, which started in the 19th century, where the newborn is going to go to school and is going to be taught all the laws that mankind has learnt, all the mysteries that mankind has solved over centuries. So we have your subjects, the laws of physics, the laws of biology, the laws of chemistry, the laws of mathematics, all as mankind has solved till date. And of course the mysteries are still not fully solved. So every year, every century, every decade, you will see these rules evolve. New ones will be added, some old ones, you will see the theories go away. So man is still discovering what God gave us, where He put us, and what other mysteries are there yet to be solved. So we are now exploring space, and in the coming centuries, of course, there will be new laws of how space travel is possible, time travel, if it is possible or not. So you read books, and you also read other books called history, which is history of mankind. You might read world history, you might read Indian history. That is all recorded so that you come up to date. You're the new machine, as I call it. Machines my age, which is in the age group of, let's say, 30 to 50 or 30 to 60, are the ones that run the world today. But machines your age, and pardon me if I refer to it as the machine, but it is a human machine, and these are the ones you're being trained to take over and run the world in the next few decades. And of course the older machines are going to fade away and die, but that is how God made the system. And we then have sophisticated the system so that we learn how to survive collectively, not individually. So you read civics, which are what we call the rules of the Constitution as to how in India you are going to be living. So we start with, what are you and me here to do? Now, of course, we ran away from physics, chemistry, biology. We ran away from maths. And that is why we came to what we call commerce. Now, I call them two laws, God's laws and man's laws. God's laws are the understandings of physics, chemistry, biology, and maths. And man's law is what we study, maybe civics, maybe history, and of course the acts. So the main act that governs India is the Constitution, or the book called the Constitution. The Constitution, beta, gives rise to the concept of the Lok Sabha, the Rajya Sabha, and the office of the President. Then he says the Lok Sabha will consist of elected members, the Rajya Sabha will consist of the nominated members, and the Lok Sabha, out of the elected members, the majority party, so the party system came into being, all authorized by the constitution. So the majority party will form the government, they will go to office every day, and they will run the country on behalf of the legislature. But the rules will not be formed by the government. The rules will be formed by the legislature. So if the government feels that there is something they need to do to govern the public of India, they need to make a proposal. They need to propose that bill to the parliament. Lok Sabha will vote on it. If it is passed in the Lok Sabha, it will go to the Rajya Sabha. If it is passed in the Rajya Sabha, then it will need the signature of the president, and then it will become an act which will then be enforceable on the public of India. But understand, all this is because it's written in the constitution. Some of you, of course, I'm sure you've heard that for the GST Act to be implemented, we needed to have a 101st amendment in the constitution, because no tax can be levied on the public of India unless it is authorized by the constitution. Therefore, if there is an act that is required to be passed which is not authorized by the constitution, then the constitution needs to be amended, and that in itself is a very difficult task. All this was written in the constitution to ensure that there is nothing that is done wrong to the public of India. So let's look at what has happened over years before you joined the study group, or before you joined Earth or planet Earth and the civilization to take over, of course, as I said, running of the planet in the coming years. Income Tax Act was passed in 1961. Companies Act was once passed in 1956. Thereafter, of course, we now know there is a 2013 Act. Partnership Act was passed in 1932. Now, what is an act? An act is nothing but a book, a set of rules. So, for example, the government feels that they need taxes from the public of India. But who's going to pay the tax? How much tax is going to be paid? There is no ruler, no, who will say, itna de do, to that is done. No. We need it all written very clearly in the book, because we are a democracy. So in a democracy, the book is the supreme power. So under the constitution, the government of India is authorized under Article 82 to levy income tax on the public of India, except on agricultural income. That is in the constitution. Now the Income Tax Act is written because of that part. But Income Tax Act cannot levy tax on agriculture because the constitution does not allow it. So the constitution is the supreme book. Are you following? Now what happens? Amongst the public of India, because there are so many books published, there is an Income Tax Act, there is a GST Act, there is a Companies Act, there is a Contract Act, there is a Negotiable Instrument Act, there is a Partnership Act, there is a Immovable Properties Act, Compulsory Acquisition Act. There are so many acts for every different purpose. So what do we do? Now, if in the public, some of us want to know, for example, one person is doing a business, he wants to know, am I required to pay income tax? Am I required to pay GST? Now, he hasn't read all the books. So what did the government come up? They constituted the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India via Act in 1949. Now, what happened there? ICAI is going to train people to read certain acts written by the Parliament for the public of India. So we are going to be trained to read the basic laws of taxation, basic laws of indirect and direct taxation, company laws, which is the Companies Act, and certain other contracts or laws. But we are not trained to read the Criminal Procedure Code or the Properties Act and so many other laws. For that, we have the Bar Council of India. So they train people. Now, amongst the public of India, some of us and you get up and say, okay, we want a degree called Chartered Accountancy, which means you're going to read these books written by the Parliament, and you're going to give exams which are conducted by ICAI, and you're going to be certified. You are an expert in these books. Similarly, people doing law will give the exam of CLAT or LSAT and then join a university to do a course for 3 to 5 years and then get the degree of law, which means they've been certified that they've read the books and understand them well. Now, when it comes to filing of returns and direct and indirect taxes, the public of India which have not read the act will come to you as a CA and ask you, sir, Am I required to pay income tax? You are going to then load the Income Tax Act into your mind and give your reply. The same person asks you, sir, am I required to pay GST? Now you will load the GST Act inside your head and give the reply. He asks you, sir, can I sign a contract? You will load the Contract Act inside your mind and give your opinion. He asks you, sir, should I form a company? Should I form a firm? How can I form a company? How can I form a firm? Well, you're going to load the Companies Act or the Partnership Act into your mind and give your advice. So, my dear child, how are you participating in the running of this world? Well, you are the person who reads all the financial books in this country and becomes an expert and is authorized by ICI, which is authorized by Parliament, to advise the public of India on what is written in those books so that they follow all the rules and they comply with all the provisions of the acts. So that is what law is. And in the coming topics, we are going to discuss how to read the acts, the applicability of the acts, what is the interpretation of the act, what does the judge do, how the IRS helps in the implementation of the act. So let's move to the next topic now.